in my opinion.
Because it's really not that cold.
9:30 to 12.
At
Yeah,
least it's been
Sylvia.
cool at night. So yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
Sylvia, I saw the snow that was in Ankeny yesterday.
Oh,
My cousin sent me pictures.
there's a lot of it, is there?
Not a lot,
Mm,
but it covered the ground.
yeah.
I was telling Dave, mine looks more moth-eaten.
I didn't know moths like to eat snow.
Now you know.
Ah,
We were just talking about how you were out in the snow in Marshalltown teaching your friends there how to make a snow angel.
yeah, yeah. That was fun. Just being with people that had never seen it or done anything with it or experienced it, and they didn't really believe they needed their boots, and then they wish they had them when they didn't have them.
And extras, but now that we're not meeting at the meeting house, and I've asked people if they want them, we have quite a few, so
We heard from them yesterday. I think our old water heater sprang a leak, and they were trying to figure out how to deal with that. But it looks like Rashidi is going to get an interview at the Veterans Hospital home, whatever it is, Veterans home.
Oh,
Soon, and the oldest son has been hired at the meat packing plant, so they're on their way to having jobs.
I was at Walmart earlier this week in Heartland Crossing. And the lady, I was getting a piece of fabric and the lady cutting it. I said, "Where are you from?" Because I could tell she had a different accent. She says, "I'm from the Congo." And she said, and I told her I was going to Kenya. And she says, "Oh, as refugees, we had to go through Kenya. We had to spend a year in Kenya before we could come to the US." So it was interesting. It looked like there was 2 or 3 of them working there.
Huh. Interesting. Yep. I wonder if they were in the refugee camp at Kakuma.
I don't know.
Maybe so.
Morning, Dan.
Good morning. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Yesterday we went to a funeral of a young man, 31 years old, who had suffered some depression in his life, but probably most people didn't know it because he was such a happy appearing person and did away with his own life and had a young wife and 4 children. And there were probably between 800 or 900 people there at the funeral. Just amazing. The whole community came out for that. Well, that wouldn't be the whole community, but a lot of them, at least a third of them, a population of Spanish Lookout.
Spanish Lookout, that's the name of the town?
It's the name of the Mennonite colony.
Okay. I thought, were they
That's-
watching out for the Spanish or?
The name was here before the Mennonites came.
Okay,
Yeah, it does seem like a strange name for a Mennonite colony.
You can kind of look over, you can see a long way from parts of the colony. But if you look to the west, in a few miles, it's Guatemala. I don't know if that's what they were looking out to see, but
Would I assume that the young man was Mennonite?
Yes, yeah.
Anybody know what was troubling him at all then?
I think it is probably an inherited tendency to depressions, but it was triggered by, he had a brother-in-law who was injured in a traffic accident, and was, had been unconscious for 3 weeks, I think. And it really was weighing on the young man. It seemed to exacerbate his depression.
According to his family, that's what they said.
Now, would there be any kind of a tradition in the Mennonite community that the community would take care of the family in some form or fashion?
Yeah, they have a lot of very well-planned, well, hardly anybody writes a will. The church has a lot of rules about what they do about these cases. And they're the wife and the young man who died both come from fairly well-to-do families. Financially, they'll be okay. Emotionally, of course, it's another story. But for families that are really struggling financially, the church steps in and takes care of them.
Hi, Jonathan.
Morning.
Is it snowing in Kentucky?
Not yet, but give it a few hours and it may be. It's raining.
Is
Yeah,
it?
they're probably on there.
We're on that line.
They combined the bean field outside our kitchen window this week.
Okay.
That seems strange.
It does.
We really struggle here to figure out what season we're in.
Yeah.
It's just hard to imagine that it's snowing where you are.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to imagine. Yeah, it was hard for us.
Hi,
It wasn't
Steve.
hard for Nancy. She
Morning.
expected it, but
Morning,
she kept
Steve.
asking yesterday,
Good morning.
is it gonna snow? Is it gonna snow? Is it gonna snow? And I kept saying no. They say it's all gonna go north of us. So when we got up and there was snow, Nancy goes, told you. Yes, you did.
Sylvia and Dan, you know, I'm a part of Lions Club, and I get a magazine, a Lions Club magazine. It's an international magazine, stories all over the world for the Lions Club. And one story kind of perked my interest because it said something about corn in Marshalltown, Iowa.
Mm.
And the whole story, it was like 3 or 4 pages in this magazine, was about popcorn in Marshalltown, Iowa.
Yeah, like they were growing it there, or they were eating it there, or
Yeah, producing it there. I'll send you the magazine.
yeah,
So you
please do that, because
yourself.
I was not aware of any popcorn production in Marshalltown.
Well,
Do you know what your tenant is doing?
I
We thought so.
I think he spends most of his time picking up my mail and paying my bills and looking after my finances.
Good man to have around.
He's a good man.
Steve, where are you?
Where
Steve?
am I?
Yeah.
I'm at home in my recliner.
Oh, I had thought you were in your trailer going somewhere. You're on.
We got back from Florida on Wednesday. Made a quick trip down to Arcadia, where we'd stayed in our RV before, but didn't take it with us. So,
Huh.
sorry to miss visiting with you, but it was kind of a quick trip down and back.
You
Well,
should give your recliner a name like my college roommate named his bed the Word, because he was Free Methodist, and they're always talking about spending time in the Word, meaning the Bible. And so his dad would call And he'd say, "Did you go to church?" His dad was a Free Methodist minister. He goes, "Did you go to church this morning?" And Dwayne would go, "No, but I spent all morning in the Word." Well, Norma, who has music for us today? Now that we have the music figured out.
Seems like. Yeah, we're up.
So for announcements, we'll have Sunday school this morning, 10:35. Going to look at the two midwives of Exodus 1 today. Next Sunday will be monthly meeting Sunday. So if there are things you'd like on the agenda, please send them to me and I'll make sure that they get on. Are there any other announcements that folks have?
Women's group is going to be meeting on Wednesday. Change of plans, we will be meeting at our house at 10 o'clock.
How about joys and concerns that friends have?
I've got a couple of joys. Drake was in some kind of competition with the jazz band and he did a solo and got a gold medal. And he's been asked to join this smaller jazz band at school, so he's excited about that. And Thursday will be Grandma Artie's 102nd birthday.
Wow. Maggie continues to be doing well. She had a 1-month checkup after getting out of the hospital. Her hemoglobin count is back to normal. The number they've watched to see how her immune system is working is rising slowly. It's not back to where they want it to be, so she still has to wear a mask and things like that. But I have heard my sister say that she has more energy than a barrel of monkeys, so she's apparently feeling quite well.
Well, a week ago, Nancy had a regular doctor's appointment and had her blood drawn, which she was just thrilled about. But today we got the results, and it was an extensive one, and they were great. Everything was where it should be. All the stuff that contributed to her stroke 3 years ago, those levels were all in normal ranges, so chances of a stroke are way down now.
Yay.
Well, let's hold these things in God's light and love as we center into some silence, prepare our hearts for continued worship. Chip is our worship leader this morning, so he'll speak out of the silence as he feels led.
Well, I started off my morning with a good laugh. And my mother always says, tell God your plans and he will laugh. And so I was so smug, and I had this whole thing about springing forward. I've got it down. I always, the day before, I changed my clocks. I only had to take Drake to the skate park, so I didn't have to be on any kind of schedule. So I set all my clocks ahead, and I was all ready, so when I woke up, I wouldn't feel like I'd really lost an hour. And then I took my pills early, my nighttime pills, so I went to bed an hour early. And then this morning, when my alarm clock went off, I realized I had forgot to set it. So instead of getting up at 6, I'd slept another hour till 7. So I feel fine and rested, but I'm like, man, I had good plans. I had it all worked out, and then it made me laugh. So it was like a funny thing happened on the way to the meeting this morning. And so I asked Norma, I said, can you play comedy tonight? And for those of you who don't know, a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum is a Broadway show, and it has the song, A Comedy Tonight. Tragedy tomorrow, but comedy tonight. So it was kind of like, I started off with a good laugh, and I'm sure Mother enjoyed it. Another thing, I'm going to talk about listening. And before I came out here, well, I moved out in 1999 to look after my mother. And I would take her shopping, and she said, after our first shopping trip, she goes, something bothered me. What was that? And she goes, you don't talk to people, and you don't listen to them. And I'm like, well, I hear them, but I don't pay any attention, and I don't know these people, so I don't want to talk to them. She goes, oh, you need to talk to everybody. When you go up there, you tell the clerk, oh, how are your children? I mean, you really need to carry on a conversation, which was not me, but now I do it. I do it all the time. Oh, and recently, it was funny, the reason I picked this, talking about listening, I'd been contacted in the last month by people that I did a show with, my very first book show at Footlight Musicals. The director called me and went in to get in touch, the choreographer called, and a couple of actors. So it was like, well, it was really good listening to them and see what they had to say. Some asked for advice because they had something they wanted to talk about. Others just wanted to catch up. So let me get started. Good morning, friends. I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of springing forward. The time sprung forward an hour, but I didn't. Well, I really did. Just when I got used to feeding the critters and hearing the birds sing and getting Drake on the bus in the daylight, I am now back to doing it in the dark. And with snow. Oh well, such is life in Indiana. Moving on. As Quakers, we all set aside time to be quiet and listen to God to speak to us. Some days we get a message and some days we don't, but we keep listening. My question to you is, do you listen to others? I would like to start with a few verses from the Bible. Proverbs 1:5. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. Proverbs 19:20. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you will gain wisdom in the future. Matthew 11:15. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. James 1:19. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. I remember after my rather down message last time on the facing bench, well, really the facing chair, that my next message would be upbeat. Well, maybe next time. I knew I wanted to do a message about listening to others, keeping it light, but on the way home from shopping, I heard this guy on the radio talking about some people are facing their own personal Armageddon. Not being a Bible reader, I was pretty sure that Armageddon had to do with the battle that ends the world. And I could understand how someone might be at a point in their life when they just didn't matter anymore what happened, and they were concerned at that point in their life it was all over and they couldn't move on. For example, because of the death of a spouse, a child, or a dear lifelong friend. Maybe they lost everything in a war, a house fire, or a divorce, or they've been in an accident and in the hospital with no insurance. All kinds of events like these could make a person feel that it was the end of the world for them. And they would love to have someone they could sit down with and talk and share their problems. Wow, that sure would be a Debbie Downer message. Let me go back a minute. I looked up Armageddon. Now, if I got this right, the Bible explains it as God's going to gather this great army together to battle with him in Jerusalem. But it won't be the end of the world. It will be 1,000 years of peace. Now, Google says most people think of Armageddon as a catastrophic event that destroys the world. And they said, but it isn't, and we shouldn't worry about it because it isn't going to happen. So you got two points, and neither one are what I thought it was. And I'm not sure what that guy on Google was talking about. Look, I never saw the movie, so I don't know what's true or not. Back to listening. I thought, well, I can do a nice lightweight message that will have to do with little things people want to talk about when they have no one to talk to. I don't have that problem. The God of Abraham sits on my sofa. I can talk to him whenever I want. I can ask for help for myself or others. I can ask that we get through to other people and help them get on the right path. I even feel free. No, I'm supposed to leave that part out. Never mind. I have a great relationship with God. I have my family, friends, and cats to talk to. In addition to God, of course, I talk to my mother. But not everyone has that kind of support group. They may need advice, but most often they want to just talk to somebody to get things off their chest. In the past few months, I have been contacted by quite a few people in my past. I have been pulled aside by a store clerk, an elderly lady at Goodwill, and even a couple of people in the grocery store, and a neighbor. Now, what did they all have in common? They just wanted to have someone to talk to. They were asking me for advice. They weren't asking me for advice. They just needed for me to listen. And keeping it light, I will give you a few examples. At the Goodwill store, I was looking at some glasses, and this lady comes up to me and she says, "Those are tiara ware." And I looked at her and I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yes. Tiara ware was this kind of glass they made in the 70s, and people collected it. They had parties, and they had all kinds of stuff, and everything was based on an old mold. Well, they made all these things out of these old molds, and then after they fired so many, they broke the mold. So they became quite collectible." And she explained all this to me. She even told me they were made in Indiana. I can't remember the city. And it was just, we just had this really nice talk. And then she followed me around and we talked. Well, I listened and she talked. And we got time to check out. And she says, I hope you didn't mind me talking to you, but I have no one to talk to." And I said, "I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And every time I drank out of those glasses, I bought them, of course, I would think of her, and I hope that we ran into each other again at the Goodwill store." One day, a clerk at another Goodwill store, I visit Goodwill quite often, the clerk got me aside and said, "I wanted to tell you something." Now, she had a crisis in her family. I only know this person just to speak to her at the checkout. But she needed to tell me that her father was in serious trouble. And I listened. I was anxious to get to they pulled out a cart, and I was anxious to get to that cart to see what I could get. But I stood there and I listened to her, and then she said, "Thank you for listening. I just needed to get that off my chest." Well, there are lots of people out there that just want someone to talk to for any number of reasons. Well, as far as I kept doing this message pretty light, but here is where it goes downhill. I was working on finishing up my message before Drake got home from school on Friday. The phone rang and then I answered it. I got a curveball. It was Nana, one of Drake's grandmothers. She was bringing over some raffle tickets for his band and said she was going to be late because her neighbor's daughter had killed herself. Then, like it was yesterday, I remember when I got that call. I got a call in the middle of the night. It was my friend Mark's partner. And I get so irritated with him. And it was Stan, and I said, "Stan, this better be important." And he goes, "It is. Mark hung himself, and the coroner wants to talk to you." Well, hearing that just set me back, because when Mark died, I thought, I heard him. I heard things I could have done. I should have gone. The last time I felt he was so down that I should go pick him up and take him to my house. And of course, I regret that to this day, that I didn't do something. He said, "Oh, don't come over," but I should have. I should have listened and went with my gut. Well, this lady that, the girl next door, she had gotten a divorce. Her husband kicked her out. She had 2 children. She was living with her mother, was in a car wreck, thought they were going to total her car, so she went out and bought a new one and found out they didn't total her car. So she owed on the new car, and she still owed on the old one. And so she went out and bought herself a gun and shot herself. And it's hard when you know someone who does that you think, did I not listen hard enough? Or were there more signs? What could I have done? Now that her children are going to go through that. They'll go through the rest of their life wondering what they could have done. Her mother will wonder what they could have done. And I hope the husband feels like, was this my fault? Yes, I am sure the young woman was fighting the battle of Armageddon and she lost. So what was the point of my message? There has to be a point. Perhaps it's God wants us to listen to friends and family as much as listening to Him. Maybe we could be the one who can help them win that battle of Armageddon. May the light of God surround you. May the love of God enfold you. May the power of God protect you. And may the presence of God watch over you. For wherever He is, God, wherever you are, God is.
That was an excellent message on listening, Chip, to complement the one you gave on greed 2 weeks ago. These are practical spiritual lessons for us all. I wanted to make one comment about suicide without going into too much. And this is my opinion, is that suicide is way too common and it's not the end of that person's soul. Suicide is the end of the genetic entity only, the physical body, but it is not the end of the person's karma or destiny or what they eventually will have to work out. It's sad, but true. So many people think they're putting an end to it all when they take their own life. They are not. All of us have to face our strengths and our weaknesses over, well, I might as well say it, over many, many lives. And that's one of the tragedies of suicide. It does not put an end to it all.
Thank you, Norma, and Chip will close the program part of worship and move into some more unprogrammed worship for those who have to leave. Go with God, and we hope to see you next week or at Sunday school. And the rest we'll just continue on in unprogrammed worship.
being able to listen to people is a real gift that God has given some of us in greater degrees than others of us. We can all listen to other people, but some of us have been given the ability to listen at maybe a deeper level. And I think those of us that have that gift somehow send out vibrations around us that tell people, hey, I'm a good listener, talk to me if you need to. And people are drawn to that and will tell us things that we sort of wonder sometimes, why in the world are you telling me this? And yet our ability to listen is a gift from God that we are giving to other people. But it has a flip side, like all things, and that is that sometimes when a person that we have listened to doesn't do well, then it's easy to get caught up in saying, well, did I do enough? Did I listen carefully enough? Did I follow up with that person enough? And I don't think that's productive, and I don't think that's what God wants us to do. I think God has given us our gift of being able to listen, and we're responsible for using it as well as we can in each situation that calls for it. But that's all we're responsible for. We have to leave the rest of it in God's hands. Otherwise, we'd be beating ourselves up all the time because we would always feel like we're never enough. And God has created all of us enough, to be loved as we are.
Well, if all hearts are clear, we'll close this portion of worship. It's good to see everybody.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff.
So,
Yes,
As
it
always.
is.
Done really well.
Yeah, I never know for sure.
No, that's true.
we were listening. So we'll be back for Sunday school in a few minutes.
I've seen the movie.
Moses and the bulrushes and all that stuff.
See y'all later. Bye, Dale.
Bye.